Good morning, Finger Lakes Television One viewers. I am so happy to be here with you this morning in beautiful Seneca Falls, where everything is happening. Driving up from Binghamton, New York was just a delight. These beautiful sidewalks, these beautiful streets, and Seneca Falls is an incredible place. We're here with producer Zach Cornett. Really delighted to be here with you today, Zach. Love this channel, love being part of the team. And I am here today with a very special guest. And I'm like surrounded by a plethora of all of her books, but here are the ones that I just love. She's got Remarkable Women of Faith, Serious Laughter, Day of Joy, but we have Bits of Joy, and my one in my personal collection, Cry, Laugh, Cook, and a book that the next one I'm buying, which is about being a keynote speaker and really taking your business to the next level. But who we have with us today is Yvonne Conte. I met Yvonne Conte about 10 years ago at SUNY Broome in Binghamton, New York, where she was giving a keynote on the use of humor in the workplace. It was really exciting because she was funny. None of us stopped laughing all morning when she was giving her talk. It was phenomenal. But when she was finished, we left with some really valuable content. And since The Power of Friends at Work, this show is about work relationships, I was fortunate enough to catch Yvonne on one of her trips here to upstate New York to come and speak to us about work relationships and beyond, and the role that humor has played in her life in creating sustainable networked relationships. So, Yvonne, I just would like you to start by telling us a little bit about yourself. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much for having me here. It is interesting how things work out because I live in Fort Myers, Florida, and I was up here to visit family a little bit, and she happened to call the day before I left, I think it was, and said, "Is there any way you could be on the show?" I said, "Absolutely," and we made it work. But that's what I think is so great about being in business. You have to be flexible, and you have to be able to kind of fit things in whenever you can, and this worked out great for us. I'm glad it did. So you want to know a little bit about myself?
Yeah, what brought you to this place in your life, and tell our viewers a little bit about who Yvonne is, and you know, it's amazing. we met about 10 years ago, yeah. But we stayed connected through Facebook.
Yes, and that's such a great thing to be able to do that.
Tell us all about your life and where you started.
Just so they're not confused, my name is Yvonne, but people who've known me a long time end up calling me Vonnie because that's the name my family calls me. So if we're real good friends, you'll see somebody will call me Vonnie, and you'll know we're good friends. But because of Facebook, we interact, and when you interact with people, you don't forget them. And so isn't it wonderful that she remembered me after all those years and called me to do this? But I find that's what happens with my speaking as well. I'm a motivational speaker, and people will call me that I have not heard from in 15 years, and I'll say, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for remembering me." And they're like, "Oh, I follow you on Facebook, or I follow you on Twitter, or whatever." And you know, that's how we stay connected. So it's really very important to make sure that whenever you meet someone, you go back to your office and you get online and you start connecting with them online, and not just connecting to collect names, but when you think of something that they might be interested in, you send it to them. Mm-hmm. When you think of something that even reminds you of them in some way, you just do a quick little something, say something, and then it forms a relationship online. But for me, you know, I'm a little more old-fashioned. I love face-to-face connection. And I especially love that because my father taught me how to connect with people and why it's so important. When he was a salesman, and he sold permanent stainless steel cookware. And when I was a little girl, I used to go with him on his dinner parties. And I would learn so much all the way there and back in the car. He would talk about sales. He would talk about people. He would talk about his product, everything that has to do with sales. And I would learn from him. As a little kid, I was like a little sponge next to him, soaking it all up. And it was always such a joy to go with Daddy outside of the business world, like go to the grocery store or go to the bank, because everybody always knew him. And we would run into somebody and he would say, "Jim, how are you?" And he'd know the guy's name. And he'd ask about his wife, and he'd ask about his kids or his job or something personal. And we'd get back in the car, and I'd say, who was that, Dad? He'd say, don't you remember? We sold him a set of cookware 10 years ago. They lived up in Pompeii on that hill. And, you know, I mean, he knew every little detail about them. And I would be like, wow, that's why people love him, because he never forgets people. And he takes, this is a Dale Carnegie rule, takes a genuine interest in other people. And that's why they remember him. And I think that's important.
I think that's how we connected so much with you the day that you showed up at the college. Of course, for me, it's because she's Italian. She's a Paisan. Oh, by the way, we are serving some Finger Lakes. Voilà,
salute.
Blueberry breeze, which is great from the heat wave we've just experienced in upstate. But I think I fell in love with Yvonne. I hope one day to call her Vani. But so many of us were drawn to her because for me it was the Italian connection, but it was the word connection. Everybody felt like she was just speaking to them that day. And how do you do that?
Well, that's the secret to being a great motivational speaker, is you have to find stories that connect with people. You can't just get up at the podium and preach. Nobody wants to be preached to. But if you can tell a story that teaches a lesson, and they can find themselves within that story, they will not only listen to you, but they'll remember you time after time. But I mean, yes, I'm an Italian girl, and all my stories come from my Italian heritage. But I'll finish speaking, and people who are Jewish will come up to me, Polish, it doesn't matter, African American, and they'll say, my Aunt Josie is just like your Aunt Frances, or my father was just like your father. And they all have so many stories to share with me. Yeah. It's just like today in the car coming up, she had asked me to bring some of my books, so I just grabbed a bunch of books off the shelf. And when we got in the car, some papers fell out of it, and they were stories that people had mailed me, emailed and land mailed, about certain things that happened in their life that was similar to the things that I had shared in my talk. And I get those kinds of emails and letters all the time.
The one that touched me was about the gentleman that turned out to be a relative.
Oh, okay. Well, the Cry Laugh Cookbook?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't even interested in writing this book. I happened to be at home one day, and my publicist was there, and my phone rang. And it was a woman out in Wichita, Kansas, who had heard me speak, and she was calling me for my brajol recipe. Which is kind of funny, but just because I'm Italian, they think, oh, she must have all the right recipes, right? So she called, and I just gave her the recipe over the phone, and that was it, and I said goodbye. And he says to me, what the heck was that all about? And I said, oh, well, people call me all the time. They want to know how to make meatballs, how to make sauce, how to make, and I just give him the recipes. He goes, oh, don't be giving him those recipes. Put them in a book, that's gold. And I said, no, that's kind of, taking advantage of my clients. I'm not a cookbook person. I don't.
Oh, yes, you are.
I know. I don't, my thing is not selling cooking or food. So I feel like that would be cheating a little bit, and I don't want to do that. And he said, well, you're foolish. You're throwing away a ton of money. So he kept after me to write this book, to put recipes in a book. And finally he said, listen, your message is about communication. It's about being able to communicate with your family members, with your clients, with your friends, your neighbors, and to have good relationships. Mm-hmm. And one of the things you talk about is that as a child, you all sat around the table together and talked. Mm-hmm. So what better way to talk about that subject in the book and just have the recipes in the back? Mm-hmm. Because those are the recipes you grew up with around that table. So he connected it, and I said, oh, all right, I will. So I did. So here's the thing. In the front of that book, matter of fact, slide the book over, because they got to see this. In the front of the book, in the intro, I had a picture that I found in my father's office, and it was a picture of my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather, and my great-aunt Mary. Mm-hmm. Well, I put it in there because I thought it was a funny picture. I never knew these people. They croaked in Italy a long time before I was born. But he's got a bottle of booze, and she looks really mad. And I thought, that's an awesome picture.
That's how it
is. Perfect Italian, right?
So I send the book off to be printed. It's printed. 2 weeks later, I get an email from Switzerland.
And this guy says, my name is Salvatore Ruggiero, and I believe we are cousins. Ugh, I deleted him. I thought, well, that's crazy. He kept on. 4 times he emailed me. 4 times I deleted it. And the 5th time he begged me. He said, I know that we're family. Please respond. Actually, it was like, I was hearing it like this. Please, Miss Conte, I believe we are relatives. Please respond. I figured he has to have an accent. He's from Europe, right? So I wrote back and I said, I have no relatives in Switzerland. Please don't email me anymore. And he writes back, but I am from Amarani. Now, Amarani is a little town in Italy where my grandfather was born. So when he said that, and it's little, it's like Seneca Falls, nobody's going to know about it, So I said, how did you find me in all this? So we started Skyping. I still thought he was trying to, I don't know, somehow scam me, over the net, And he said, for 10 years he's been looking for family members. He said his father died, and on his deathbed he gave him a box of pictures, and on the back of the pictures were the names of the people that we're related to in the United States, but no addresses, no phone numbers, nothing. And he said, I've been putting those names in the internet and looking for you for 10 years, but when I put the names in, I get tons and tons of Contes all over the United States. I don't know where to start looking. But last week, I put Amarani, the town we're from, and Conte, and this book came up #1 in the search. He said, I bought the book online, because you could buy the digital. And he said, when I opened it up and saw this picture, I gasped, because that is Salvatore's grandmother.
Oh, my God.
So my great aunt is his grandmother. My grandfather and his grandmother are brother and sister. Oh, my gosh, I freaked out. So I got on a plane and went to Switzerland, like within days. And they all met me at the airport. They had all these people that I had no idea who they were, treated me like royalty. I mean, they never even knew my name, but because we were blood, they embraced me with so much love. It was very overwhelming and humbling. And then we got, we ate like mammoth foods every night, big dinners. And then we got on a plane and went to southern Italy. And he introduced me to 68 cousins that I did not know existed. And they all met me at the airport with signs and everything else. It was wonderful. And then they had a big party for me at a restaurant. And I mean, honestly, it's hard to really understand that kind of love. That they simply love you because you're part of them.
Right.
There's no judgment. There's no, I got to see if I like this person. It was just so amazing. In one of the houses, my cousin Barbara, and by the way, everybody there is either Barbara or Salvatore, because you're always named after your grandfather, and it's like, this is your cousin Barbara, this is your other cousin Barbara, this is your other cousin Barbara. Oh, it's really funny. Anyway, my cousin Barbara, on her wall, she had a picture of my daughter and my son when they were little. And I said to my cousin Salvatore, I said, Salvatore, how the heck does she have my son? My grandmother would send pictures as the kids were born.
Oh, my God.
And they put them on the wall.
Oh.
My daughter's in her 40s, my daughter and my son, and their picture is on their wall even to this day.
I have a picture like that where my relatives sent a bride and groom with a wheel of Parmesan cheese.
Always.
So we pick the picture up and be like, Italy.
I know.
Italy,
I know.
bride,
it's
groom,
amazing.
cheese.
Yeah. But that was a wonderful connection to make, and it was all because of a book that I really did not want to make in the beginning, but it has proven to be a life changer for me because I met so many wonderful cousins. I've been back several times, and they are the kindest, most generous people I think I've ever met. And because of one of my visits, I stayed the whole month of August, poor me, in Italy, in southern Italy with my family, because I really wanted to get to know them and understand them. And the result of that is a new program that I have called The 7 Habits of Exceptionally Happy People.
Love it.
And it's based on what I saw while in this little town, Amarani. Because, they still go to the fountain up in the mountain to get their water. You know, they live in small quarters. They don't have heat. Some of them don't have heat in the winter, so they have a fireplace and they just kind of live in one room during the winter and close everything off. So they don't have all the luxuries that we just take for granted. And yet they're the happiest people I've ever come across.
You know, the Dalai Lama says that everybody has a certain set point for happiness.
Yes.
And I've always believed it's just kind of like in our DNA.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to know that when you talk about the habits, like you said it was transformational for you to be there.
Absolutely.
And then you were inspired to do this concept. What have you done? What would you recommend as a way? What are some of the habits to help people cultivate happiness in their own lives?
Honestly, I look at the way they live and I see that they are like a generation behind us, because a lot of the way that they live right now in this moment is the way I was brought up. But it's not the way families are living now. And I think we're missing a core part of life by not recognizing the importance of family. When I was in Italy, you sat at the table for hours and talked. Little kids, adults, teenagers, all ages. It didn't matter. They didn't have to run off with their friends. They didn't have to look at their iPhones. They were not glued to their iMacs or whatever they're called, all these machines. These were kids that sat at the table with the aunts and the uncles and the grandparents and the cousins and interacted for hours. And they learned about one another. And what I loved is I noticed that the little kids were like hanging on their moms. They were all touching one another. We're afraid to touch anybody anymore in this world.
I know.
And so what I saw genuine, pure love for one another as family. And that really contributes so much to your overall happiness. These people can go out in the world and know that they are truly loved, and that no matter what they do or say, they will not be judged by these people. These people are people who love them.
You know, when we were driving here, we've only met physically twice. Briefly when I bought your book, and you
but I feel
wrote
like you're my cousin.
Well, yeah. I have a sister Barbara, by the way. But when we were driving, we were really disclosing a lot about each other. Just the drive from Syracuse here,
Yes.
a 1-hour drive.
Yes.
And I felt listened to, because I really feel that a lot of what you talk about in communication is the listening and the share. So there was a lot of disclosing between the two of us, but a lot of genuine listening.
Well, listening is the most important part of communication, because if I could talk to you all day long, but if you're not listening to what I say, then what's the point? And that was the key that my father had that was so great. Yes, he did talk with people, but he listened so well that he remembered the next time he saw them and commented on something that was in a conversation in the past. That's why people loved him. I had a doctor in Camillus. I absolutely loved her, Jennifer, her name was. And I thought to myself, she must see hundreds and thousands of patients over the year. And I would go in once a year for my physical. She would ask me about the Day of Joy. She would ask me about my son in California. She would ask me about my daughter and my daughter's business and my grandchildren. Probably, as soon as I finished talking with her, she wrote everything down in the chart,
Right.
But she took the time to make a note of what I was talking about in the past, and then ask me about it the next time she saw me.
That's great.
That's powerful.
It is powerful.
And to be successful in this world, you do have to listen to what other people are saying.
And it has to be from your heart.
Yes, genuine.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe the best way to cultivate that is just to keep doing it and find people. Brian Grazer, the guy that wrote A Curious Mind,
Yeah.
he said that you have to have a natural curiosity about
Curiosity,
people.
yes. I was just going to say that. I was going to say the key to that is just to be a curious person, to want to know. And you can learn so much. The person who thinks they know everything is absolutely a person who will never grow.
Right.
Because if you are so curious, like I want to know, how did you decide to retire, and how did you decide to go into the business that you're in, and how did you decide to train and to come here to do this show? I want to know that. I want to know that because, hey, maybe someday I might want to do something like that,
You
or
should.
someone I know might want to do something like
You
that.
should.
You know, but I love to know what drives people. I love to know the motivation behind your decision.
Well, there's a lot of talk now about what is your why. Have you ever heard that? A lot
Yes,
of the
I have heard
podcasters
that.
say, "What is your why?"
Yeah, why are you doing it?
Like looking at your life, I keep getting this connection with you and your dad.
Yeah.
And the inspiration.
Yeah.
But and my why is my ancestors.
Yeah.
But what is your why?
Well, it does have a lot to do with my father because he taught me so many things, and I, in a way, what I do is an extension of what he did. But the reason that I'm a motivational speaker is because, and this may sound so simple, but there are so many people, even in my own life, who just don't know how to enjoy life.
Right.
We've been given this beautiful time on this earth, and it's measured. We never know how long this time is going to be. Now you have a choice, and it so is a choice whether you live that life happy or miserable. And so many people live that life nervous and worried and you know, anxious and all these negative things. Now, I have negative things that are going on in my life. You could look at as negative things. I have people in my family who are dealing with illness. I have, an aging mother that who knows how long I'll have my mother. I'm not married, so I have nobody to take the garbage out. There's a lot of things going on in my life, right? So I could focus on the things that are not going right.
Right.
Or I could focus on those things that are really working beautifully for me and making me happy. And it is a choice. There are some people who say, how can I be happy? Like, for instance, recently at a conference, a woman said, how can I be happy? My son died. And we don't bury our children. Now, I sympathize with her. I don't know what that pain is like. I've never been there, thank God. But I have had friends who have lost children. And you do make a choice. I mean, look at, what's her name, with Hope for Heather. I forgot her name.
I'm drawing a blank.
Oh my gosh. Well, her daughter Heather passed away from ovarian cancer. Now, I'm sure she misses her daughter every single day. But instead of being depressed and living a life that is just nothing but sadness and tears, she created a nonprofit organization called Hope for Heather, and she raises thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for research for ovarian cancer. She turned a very big negative into a very big positive.
Beautiful.
I mean, it's a choice. Or you can choose to just be miserable the rest of your life and sit home and feel sorry for yourself.
That's why I think your book is Cry, Laugh, Cook,
Yeah.
because you had your own time of crying,
Correct.
and then...
Well, there's an
go ahead.
actual reason why I named it that.
Oh, okay.
I had 3 sisters.
Uh-huh.
When you have 3 sisters living in one house, you got my shirt on, those are my pants, don't touch my hairbrush, all of that. So we had a lot of spats growing up. And my father would always look at us and say, hey, you're sisters, you love one another, never mind the fighting.
Right.
So we'd have our moment of crying and tears, and then he would call us in the kitchen, and he'd say, come on, let's make some pasta fazool, or let's make some beans and greens or something. You chop the onions, you chop the garlic, and we worked together, and we would laugh, something would be funny, and then we'd sit around the table and eat. So cry, laugh, cook.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
This is a perfect segue into the next part, power of friends at work and working together. When you came to speak at the college where I was working, you talked about corporate culture and working together and bringing humor into the workplace. And so many of the companies that I've been working with, they're stressed. They have draining resources.
Yes.
There's less people doing more work.
Yep.
What are some of the things that we can do to cultivate better work relationships?
Well, there are many things you can do. I think it's important to understand the importance of having a culture in your office where people want to go to work. If you could create a corporate culture where people wake up in the morning and they can't wait to get there. And when 5 o'clock comes, they're like, oh, but I got to finish this one more thing. They don't want to leave. You've got gold. Because that means you have people that while they're there, they're enjoying what they're doing. The way that you cultivate that is by appreciating the people that work for you and with you. So there is a company that is a client of mine in Liverpool, New York, which they have the worst job. I'm sorry, the worst job for me. I could never do it. They're on the phone all day long, taking orders for cable. That's all they do. Not cable TV, the cable that they make for underground and all of this. I mean, boring, right? And yet, everybody that works there loves it. They can't wait to come in the morning. They don't want to go home at night. And here's why. Because they allow the people to decorate their cubicle any way they want. So first of all, when you go in, every cubicle is different. One looks like Hawaii. One looks like, their heritage. Something looks like cookies. I mean, they got everything hanging and everything. And the other thing is they have contests all day long. And it's for little things like free coffee at Starbucks or whatever. And so the manager's going around wanting to know, like every time they have a sale, they ring the bell, and then whoever has 5 sales in the next 10 minutes gets a free coffee. Whoever, so they have little contests just to energize the staff and get them going. They love it. In the building, they have their own gym, they have their own daycare center, they have an espresso machine and all the kind of coffees they want. They don't pay for any snacks, it's all free.
Wow.
Now, that's a tiny little drop in the bucket to make this staff want to come to work every day and work hard.
Right.
But so many business owners are so afraid that they're spending too much money. Oh no, we got to make them pay for their coffee.
Right.
What is that costing you?
Right.
You know what it's costing you? It's costing you absenteeism, because nobody wants to come to work if they don't feel appreciated. They're going to, I worked in a place one time when I would wake up in the morning and the first thing I thought was, what excuse could I possibly have not to go to work? Because that's the last place I want to be.
I've had jobs like that where you just feel like you're hitting that alarm, you're hitting it over and over, like 10 more minutes, 10 more minutes.
Exactly.
One thing I love about Finger Lakes One, and Zach, you can really appreciate this. The first time I came, Jim Sinacrapi came in, and he was like so much fun. And there's a lot of encouragement for the staff to do things like website development for locals. And he brings in a lot of the millennials and this energy. And a lot of companies are having trouble keeping millennials. And here's a place that engenders a here, take this and go with it type of attitude, which is fantastic.
I have one company that has their own company band, and they have people that work in the company that are part of the band, and at lunchtime they can go play music, so there's live music. They have hot dog vendors that come and give them hot dogs for lunch. Anything that shows your employees that you appreciate what they do, I guarantee you will make your employees work harder and longer and do a better job than if you're constantly criticizing them or picking on something, But you want to create friends at work, happy hour, things like that, or going on little excursions together. Take your sales team to the comedy club one night, or take the accounting team out to dinner or whatever. But trying, and also too, to get the people from different departments to interact with one another. Another company I have that's out in Wisconsin, they make it mandatory that they have if you work in accounting, one day a month you work in sales, and somebody from sales works in accounting, and somebody from administration works in, so they make people work in all different areas of the company, so that if I'm sitting in accounting and I'm mad because the salesman didn't turn in his contract on time.
Right.
Well, once I work as a salesman, then I understand sometimes the client doesn't get the information to you on time. You understand one another, you're less likely to get upset if you think somebody didn't do their job properly.
That is so common,
Yeah.
where people think that the other person isn't pulling their weight.
Right.
But to try in their shoes to actually be in their department, brilliant.
Yeah.
Yours, you got a lot of good
Understand
tips
one
on
another.
this. Pay attention. These are really good. Good stuff.
Yeah, but the key is, think about this. If you had a day off,
Right.
it's a beautiful day. Mm-hmm. Who do you want to spend time with? You're not going to go, let me call my miserable friend Jim, nobody wants to be with somebody that's miserable.
Except somebody like themselves.
Well, even those people don't want. So you want to call somebody that's positive, uplifted, motivated, funny. You want to laugh, you want to have a good time. Mm-hmm. And so these are the people that you're going to want to work with as well.
Yeah.
So you want to cultivate an atmosphere at work where people really genuinely respect and care about one another, and are able to help one another because they want to.
Yes.
So
and
you
you engender that. You're not only fun and funny, but you have a spirit of joy that anyone feels it when they meet you.
Oh, thank you.
Tell our viewers about a day of joy.
Oh, the day of joy. Okay. I love what I do as a motivational speaker, which is talk with corporate America. But in 2010, I got an idea to create a day for women in central New York, because a lot of people were going out of town to go to these Christian motivational days for women. And that can be expensive because you're traveling out of town. In many cases, you have to pay for a hotel room, and then you also have to pay for a babysitter. And it's just a difficult thing for a lot of local women, especially if they have young families. So I said, we should do some kind of a motivational Christian day for women here in Syracuse. So I called 10 of my friends from 10 different faiths, because this is not one faith. We are all followers of Christ, but you could be Episcopalian, Methodist, Baptist, doesn't matter. We're all under the same roof, right? Mm-hmm. And we sat around my dining room table. None of us had any experience in putting together a conference of this size, and we just prayed about it, and we decided to put together a one-day conference for women. The first one was at Liverpool Community Church, and we got 325 people to come, which was amazing because we didn't know what we were doing. But it was so much fun, and people loved it, that the second year we ended up with over 500 women, and we ended up at Resurrection Church. Mm-hmm. Then we outgrew Resurrection Church in East Syracuse, and we ended up at Believers Chapel, and we've done it at the Vineyard as well. But it's a full day of laughter and fun, mm-hmm. and learning about the Bible. Everything is Bible-based. It's not anything that is religion. There's a big difference between religion and faith. Religion is a club you belong to, mm-hmm. with their own little rules, and faith is based on Scripture. So mm-hmm. we're faith-based. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the good thing about this this organization is that it is 501c3 nonprofit, and we raise money through our conferences, through mm-hmm. sponsorships, mm-hmm. and we have vendors as well that sell all kinds of stuff. And every penny that is earned by the Day of Joy is given away to other local charities in the city where we do the conference. So we've given to Hope for Heather. We've given to what is it called? Something house for abused women.
I'm not sure because of being from Binghamton.
Vera
I'm not
House.
sure.
Vera
House.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's pretty
We've given it to just many different organizations.
Yeah.
Dress for Success, just any organization that we feel helps women become stronger, more healthy, better women in our community. That's who we give the money to. And it's a joy to hand that check over at the end of the day. I'm like so psyched. It's like I'm being Santa Claus, you know? And so we have a blast. Well, then I got the idea to go to Florida. Mm-hmm. And I bought a condo down in Florida, and I started networking with people down there. Now we have a Day of Joy in Florida. This is our third year. We've been doing tremendous in Florida. And just this year, got the idea to go to Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we went to Chattanooga, and we started a Day of Joy conference there. So we're able to pour money back into the communities that host us so that they can better help the women and children in their communities to live better lives.
Now,
It's an amazing
one of your current projects is to raise funds through a book.
Oh, the book.
One
I'm so
word,
glad you
which I
mentioned
love.
it. Okay, this is a brand new project. We just sent it to the editor. The name of the book is One Word. And it is a collection of essays written by some local celebrities and other, national celebrities. We have Laura Hand, who is a local journalist here in the Syracuse area. Robin DeWind, who is a journalist in Rochester. They all wrote essays about something that changed their life or taught them a really big lesson or moved them in a different way. Laura Hand's, she's been my friend for years. I read her essay and I learned so much about her in that one essay. First of all, I didn't know she was born in Italy, but she was. But her lesson is about discrimination. And it's such a powerful story that she wrote. But we have Tom Rutledge, who is a psychoanalyst. He lives in Nashville, Tennessee. And Tom Proietti, who is a wonderful professor from the Rochester area. He wrote in there. Terry Zebek, who is was vice president of Lehigh Harrison. She's now in Phoenix, Arizona. And Vincent Durham, who is a playwright in Hollywood. I mean,
Wow.
I was able to get so many great people to write in this book. The last one I found was a young boy. His name is Austin Beers. And he gave such a tremendous speech at his graduation at North Syracuse High School, or East Syracuse, Manoa, that somebody sent it to me, and I contacted him and said, can I put this in the book? So he will be one of the authors in the book.
Wonderful.
So there's probably 35, 40 people who have written essays telling us how something in their life changed because of one word someone said.
What was the transformational experience? Do you have an essay in the book, and what is your one word? What was your transformational experience?
I'll tell you. The word is integrity. And when I was looking for someone to donate some fruit for the Day of Joy, the first time, you always go back to people that you know. If you're looking for something, you want somebody that you have a connection with. And I happened to be going down the street and I saw Syracuse Banana, which is a big produce company in Syracuse. And I thought, my father used to know the guy that owns that. But my father died in 1995. Wow. So who knows if it's even owned by the same people. And I haven't been there since I was a kid. But when I was a kid, we used to go there every Saturday and get our produce. And I remember the man's name was Frank Insera. His last name is Insera. But I thought my father was saying Frank and Sarah. And I always wondered where Sarah was. But come to find out, his last name is Insera. So I thought, well, what's it going to hurt if I ask? So I went in and I said, listen, is this company still owned by Frank and Sarah? And she said, no, he passed away many years ago, but his son Steve runs it now. I said, oh. And I thought, well, he's never going to remember me. I said, he probably won't remember me, but he might remember my father. If you tell him Frank Conte's daughter Yvonne is here, and if he'd just spend a moment with me, I have something I want to ask him. And she said, okay. So she presses the button. She says, Steve, I have Frank Conte's daughter Yvonne here. And he clicked off. He didn't even answer. And I thought, what the heck? 2 minutes later, this big guy comes barreling down he goes, Vonnie! And he's got his arms out, I'm like, oh my gosh, So I hugged him and he said, what the heck brings you here? We had this nice talk. He remembered me from when I was a kid.
Oh my! And your father's legacy lives on through
And my
you.
father's legacy lives on, but wait. So I finally, after we got caught up on our family history, he said, so what brings you here? And I said, well, I'll tell you, I got this new thing. It's called the Day of Joy. It's going to be powerful. And I'm looking for people who will donate anything at all so that we can feed them breakfast and lunch. And I said, and I thought, I might as well stop here, see if you got any old bananas or apples you want to toss my way. And he said, for Frank Conte, I'll give you all the fruit you need.
Oh, God.
My father had been gone for decades. And he said, for Frank Conte, you can have all the bananas and apples you want. And he has supported the day of joy ever since. Every year with fresh apples and bananas. Chokes me up every time I tell the story. Because what it said was that my father was such a man of integrity that this young kid would remember him 20 years later and be willing to give fruit to me.
Yeah.
Just because I'm his daughter.
Beautiful story.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely beautiful.
But that speaks volumes to the man that he was.
Yes.
And he was a
Yes.
man of integrity. He was a man that he truly cared about people.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's the key. If you want to be successful in business, it all goes back to very basic, common sense information. Be kind to one another. Respect one another. Be generous. One of the things I loved about my dad is he was never afraid to teach other people to be as successful as he was. In fact, he loved it. He had training sessions with his men every Saturday because he had over 100 men that worked for him selling. And every Saturday he'd be in the office and he just would stand in front of that group and he would work with them to try to make them great salespeople. And his sales force was #1 in the country year after year after year in sales. Back in the 50s, he was selling over $1 million worth of cookware, like within 6 months. It was, it was astounding how much cookware he sold. What makes me so happy is when I speak and someone comes up to me afterwards and says, "My mother still has your father's cookware."
Oh.
They'll say, "I remember when your father came and sold us our cookware." And it could be Watertown, it could be Buffalo, Binghamton, Utica, anywhere in New York State. And one time I was in Pennsylvania and the lady said, "I think your father came and sold my mother her cookware."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I ask people that are on the show, who did you work with, the work relationship that impressed you or helped you? But you were your dad's sidekick.
I was his
You were
sidekick.
with him 24/7.
Yes.
I think your next book should be about selling, because I think you really garnered so much, and you followed on in his footsteps with your keynotes
I
and
feel like I
speaking
did.
and
I feel like
teaching.
he could have been a tremendous motivational speaker because he was all about bringing people up. But you see, that goes right in line with you asking me about corporate culture.
Right.
It's about bringing people up. It's about going into a business where your workers are merely telephone operators and making them feel and making them really understand how important their job is.
Yes.
That's why he was successful, because he was able to help people feel how important they were. It wasn't phony.
Right.
It was the truth. He knew. In fact, he used to say, he told me, when you grow up and you want to work, make sure you pick a job where you really care about what you're doing, because if it's not important to you, you won't be successful. And I said, well, you sell pots and pans. And they're really expensive. So how is that? He said, I don't sell pots and pans, honey. I sell good health for the families that buy these pots and pans. Because they were the waterless cookware and it was better for your health and all. But you see, back then, he was looking at the why.
Right.
He was looking at why this product is helping this person or how it's helping this person. So he focused on, I'm selling good health for the family. I'm not selling pots and pans.
Right.
That's brilliant.
It is brilliant.
Yeah.
That he
So-
was ahead of his time.
He was
Because
way-
now they say, look at your customers' needs. But he was doing that
He was
then.
what? Yep.
Unmet need.
Yeah. I recently, we had a family reunion and we were looking at some old paperwork, and I found an article about him that was written in the Utica Observer newspaper about how tremendous of a person he was, because he was so honest and kind and genuine. And that's why he became so successful. This is amazing. I wish I brought the article so I could quote it properly, but actually I printed it and I put it on my Facebook page. So if you really want to read the article, go to the Facebook page. But it was about the mayor of Utica made September 9th, or September 8th, I think it was, Frank Conte Day in Utica, New York. And they had a big party for him at the Hamilton Hotel in Utica, and Mayor McKenna came, and Congressman Mancuso came, and there was all these different big shots of the day that came and spoke about my dad in front of all these people. And what they said was, it was amazing, because at one point he came home from the service completely crippled. He was in a wheelchair and unable to even, he couldn't pick up it's how he used to pick up a glass, okay? Now, in the article it says, people in power made it possible for him to get a job at Valley View Golf Course. People in power. We don't know who that was. My sister says, but we don't know who that was. People in power.
People in power.
Back then. But, because people didn't want to hire him because he was unable to do anything. He was sitting in a chair. He couldn't move his hands, And they gave him this concession stand at the golf course. And he sat behind the concession stand. Now, he couldn't make change because he couldn't use his hands. He couldn't get up and get the soda out of the machine because he couldn't get out of the chair. So the people used to come to the stand, go behind the counter, get their own soda, put their own money in, and go on. But he was successful because he talked to the people and he communicated with the people and he made them feel important. He talked about their golf game. He talked about their families and this and that. And he was successful. Well, there was a man that came to the stand who was golfing, and his name was Johnny LaForest, and he was from Rochester. And he happened to be a salesman for Permanent Stainless Steel Corporation. And he said, Mr. Conte, you would make an excellent salesperson for Permanent Stainless Steel. And my father thought he was making fun of him because he was in the wheelchair.
Right.
And he at first he looked at him and he thought, is this guy for real? How can I be a salesman? I can't even get out of this chair. And he said, it doesn't matter. I think you would be amazing. Now, this is a great story for anybody with any kind of disability.
Right.
Because it shows you that if you want to do something, you can.
Right.
So he agreed to work for this man, and he kept the stand as insurance. He made my mother run the stand while he learned how to do this. So he happened to get sick during this, and he was in the hospital for 6 months. So while he was in the hospital, he learned the after-dinner speech, and he learned all about the cookware. He studied the whole time he was there. And then he went out, and he started selling cookware, and the first 2 dinner parties he had, he didn't sell one thing.
Oh.
But he said he learned from his mistakes. He realized what he was doing wrong. And then he put together a presentation, and he was so successful that people couldn't believe that he was that successful, especially with all of his disabilities. So then he started hiring other men and training them, and he just became so successful.
How many did he end up having?
He had over 100 men working for him. And when they wrote that article, 1956, he had a mansion in Biscayne Bay, Florida, that he bought from Diamond Jim Brady, some person of influence. And he had a beautiful mansion in Utica, New York. And he was doing well. He was doing millions of dollars worth of business. This is a man that he was 100% disabled. He could have relied on the government to support him the rest of his life and didn't.
It was about fortitude and motivation. And wow.
He said he never once thought about not supporting his family.
What a great influence for you.
So I read that article and I was like, wow, this is fantastic. And I was talking to my sister Jackie about it. I said, how come we didn't know any of this stuff? It's because to him it was an everyday occurrence.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big deal that he did well. It was part of his life.
It was who he was.
It was who he was. He started when he was 8 years old selling eggs door to door during the Depression. I mean, that's amazing.
What an influence. What a great influence in your life.
So that's my dad.
So I love him. I wish I knew him. But I feel like I do know him through you.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I feel like I bring him back to life every time I talk about him.
Yes.
And hopefully I'm teaching my grandchildren a little bit about him so that they know who their great-grandfather was, So it's important to me.
It's beautiful. And there's another book for you, The Story of Frank Conte.
The Story of Frank Conte. Oh my gosh, that's
and then that can be your sales book. I'll help you with that.
Well, I plan on writing a book about my mother and father because their love story is amazing. But that's another show.
That's a whole show. And I love romance.
Yeah.
Speaking of romance.
Yes.
Have you been looking for love?
Well, I have. Actually, now we're telling stories now because most of my family doesn't know this, but I joined a dating service, and it's an amazing dating service. It's called the $1 Million Matchmaker. You have to have a certain level of income. You cannot have any debt. And they have a lot of rules, so you're getting quality people. So I have decided that I'm going to write essays about every encounter I have, and then write another book called Shades of Gray Hair.
Love it, love it, love it, love it.
Right in my senior years. That'll be my last book.
Oh, fantastic. So, anything else? You've told us about a lot of things that you're working on. How can our viewers reach you? That's the most important thing right now.
Well, the best way to reach me is through email, smile@YvonneConte.com. But, go to my webpage, YvonneConte.com, and all of my information is there. But I'm going to do a little something special for you. Anybody that wants any one of my books, Cry, Laugh, Cook, or the Bits of Joy, or even the Day of Joy,
holding them up. I'll
Serious
hold them up for our
Laughter,
viewers.
we don't sell
Bits
anymore.
of Joy,
But
Cry, Laugh, Cook,
the little
and Day of Joy.
If you go to the web, you're going to pay around $26 with tax and shipping.
Yes.
But if you email me at smile@YvonneConte.com, I will send an autographed copy to anyone that emails me for just $10 plus $2 shipping. So send me your name, your address that you want me to mail it to, who you want me to autograph it to, and then your phone number, and I'll give you a call, and we'll send it right out.
So you said your email address like you were an auctioneer.
I did?
Can you slow it down?
smile@YvonneConte.com. So
Wonderful.
it's SMILE, smile@YvonneConte.com.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Yvonne.
you.
It was a wonderful ride up. I can't wait to head back to Syracuse. We're going to have more chat, more conversation. Maybe we'll do lunch.
Yes.
And I
also
just
look for
thank
the
you
Day of
being
Joy
here.
because we're going to be doing that in the spring. And you can go to
Fantastic. I would love it.
dayofjoy.org for that. Dayofjoy.org.
Thank you. .org. And thank you, Finger Lakes One, for availing me this opportunity to meet with wonderful guests like Yvonne. Thank you, Zach. It was a wonderful day, and we're back on the road. Bye-bye.